let's get started without any further ado. When you open up your Art and Stitch, this is the screen that you're going to be seeing. You'll start with a blank page. Across the top here is information. Of course, we haven't created anything. We do want to make sure that we are in the quilting style. To change that, go under the Tools tab, and these are the window tabs at the top of your screen. Go under Preferences, and you'll either be quilting or creating embroidery, and today we're going to be quilting, creating a quilting design. And there are other tools across the top here. Some of the a lot of the tools are available here in the sidebars and across the top, but some tools can only be found exclusively up here in the tabs, like Open or the Print. Print can be accessed by your keyboard with the combination of a Control key and a P key, or just clicking on this bar, or there's the tool to print at the top of the page. So there's several ways you can access the help or access your tools. This is probably the most important tab under Help. It's going to tell you in the About what version you have if you need to update. Updates can be found at artandstitch.com/download, and they will get the latest build to you. We are currently at Art and Stitch 4.1 build 3242. Also, there's a user's guide available, and I know some of you have had it printed out. It is available on board in your computer at any time, and I will bring that up. This is the user's guide, table of contents down the left-hand side, and you can scroll down to find your subject matter, or come up here and use the little search icon, and that will bring up this text box. If you want to put in, say you want to find something in the motif field, under the subject of motif fill, click Next, and it will bring up all the occurrences of that board. And you see down here, well, let me try it again. You see down here it's highlighted, and I can go back. That little that little bar keeps coming up. Let's try another page. Here it will tell you where that motif fill under the table of contents where we found it. There's an exercises on motif fill. Maybe you want to create a motif fill. If that one just happens to go to the subject you're looking for, it's found on page 10. So that's a quick way to get help on a subject that you're looking for. Okay, back to our page. Along the top we have Workspace Tools. We can turn on, of course we have the rulers. We can turn on our grid. We can turn on a diagonal grid and snap to grid tools that will ensure that, say, the lines or shapes that you're drawing snap to a certain place on the grid that you're creating. But we are going to need those today. These are your select tools and reshape tools. And you notice when you hover over a tool that a little explanation box comes up. So if you forget what it is, the computer's telling you. You have a zoom tool also over on the right, and you can shut this on and off. simply by closing it. It goes away if you hit N, the letter N on your keyboard, it comes back. If you lose your place, say on your workspace, say you created something and you click over here and it's you can't see it anymore. In your navigator box, this red box highlights your design. You can bring it back. You can also use your spacebar to bring the design back into full screen. So I just created a design, of course, with the pencil tool. These are all drawing tools. If I go back to my Reshape tool, you'll find that this design has what we call nodes. You can click on those nodes and they can be dragged, left click, and keep holding the left click and drag it up. You can drag on these handlebars and reshape things. And if you go back to your select tool, you can assign stitches to this. So you assign a running stitch and it's ready to go to your machine. We've created something. I know that's not very pretty, but we've created a quilting design that certainly can be stitched out on your machine. You would want to go, when you finish your design, you would want to go up to File, Save As, and save it as an art and stitch in the ENS working file. If ever you needed to come back and say add to or somehow modify this design, you will need a working file. And of course, I'm not going to save that thing, but it's just for demonstration. And then you would create an additional file, which is going to be saved in your machine format. So you'll actually be creating two files, an art and stitch working file and a file that's going to stitch out on your machine. A file that has the extension relative to your machine. Okay. Some of the designs that I created, I'm working on this one right now. It's called Rainy Day, and boy has it been rainy here lately. I had a terrible time with the first conference. We got booted offline, and hopefully the Thunder Boomers will not be around for this session of the meeting. But anyway, this is a design that I've been working on, trying to create an edge-to-edge design. You'll see I've done some of my lines, but I haven't connected all my pieces together. What I did was actually create things in components. I created this umbrella and I turned the one umbrella into a border. So I selected the first umbrella, flipped it, which is this tool up here, mirror image, and then connected them. So you can see the little running connect line here. If I wanted to see how that would sew out in a border, of course I would only want one, so I don't need it duplicated twice, but I can preview. And of course we can do this in our Pro Stitcher machines. We can duplicate and size a pattern to our quilt, so you wouldn't have need, but it's nice to preview what it's going to look like when it stitches out. So there is one component of my edge-to-edge design, was the umbrella, and this is the welly boots. And so I would simply copy and power copy these into my edge-to-edge design in different shape sizes. Of course, we can turn any of our designs simply by clicking on the little handles in the corner, and you'll see I can rotate that easily enough. So that design still needs to be completed. One other tool that I used while I was creating this was the Interlocking Preview, and that doesn't have a button on any of the side toolbars. It is found up under the View tab. And what that does is gives me a on-screen preview of what a repeat of that pattern is going to look like when I sew it out. So it makes it easier to create as far as placement of my items, what it's going to look like when it sews out. So it's kind of a neat tool. The next thing I wanted to cover was a sunflower, and this I used several different techniques to create this. I drew a single petal and a little pearl, and you see the petals are on the outside, a little strand of pearls around the center of the flower, and the crosshatch. So how did I get all of those perfectly aligned? Well, by selecting that petal that I drew, go up to another wonderful tool called the Magic Circle. I can turn that petal into a flower. So I want to add 8 petals, and that sort of looks like that. I just have to finish off the center of the flower, but that gives me a good start. And I would click OK to bring it onto my workspace. The next thing I did was to create the pearls that go around. I would select that, right click on that, and design on path. And that brings up several different situations. I would do a circle and of course size it down to what I wanted and bring it into my flower. The next thing I would do would be to select this larger circle for the center of the flower, and I created that with the Crosshatch tool, and that can be found here on the second toolbar, and you'll see that I can create the style in a line, a curve, or a wave. I chose a line, and then a pattern. You have several patterns to choose from. I chose the crosshatch, click OK, and if I go over to my Properties tab, I can reduce the spacing down, so that makes the stitches tighter together, and click Apply. And of course I butt it down, and that would bring it over. That would be the center of my flower. A hex tool that I created with this pre-designated art tool. There, if you click the little arrow at the bottom, you see there's lots of shapes here, and I use the hexagon, so you don't have to draw squares or circles. And that's the same way in the previous example that I did the little pearls. So I would click on the hexagons, and then once I had my hexagon, over to the Properties panel, transform, and set my size. Click Apply. Then I used another hexagon, and I sized it down to 5 inches, drew my little flower inside, and used a creative fill to fill in the background. Creative fills can be found down here in your library tool. It takes a little while to bring them up, and you can bring in several designs, or I'm going to bring in 4 designs at a time so that it's easier to see. And you'll see there is a stipple that I use to fill in the background. In the next example, I created another hexagon, but this time again with the Hex tool. So I use that again, the cross hatching, and this little floral design I got again from the Shapes library, from the library under the Shapes. And the next thing I have to show you is I designed a quilt in electric quilt, and I exported the image of the quilt as a JPEG file and designed my own quilting designs for it. And you can see here, I'll select the quilting design and let's make it red so you can see. And so I used that to map out where I was going to place the designs, what the quilt might look like when I was done with the design. So that's as easy as opening up the file, selecting it, and going to copy, and then I'll go back to that layout and I would paste it in, and then again using the handles on the side, or you can use your transform tool, I would bring it in and size it down to the block in my quilt, something similar to that. And this is what the quilt looks like with the design laid out on the quilt top. So you can either preview what your top is going to look like, or print this out and show it to a customer as far as what you were planning for their quilt. The next and last thing is going to be the Embroidery Plus, which is Art and Stitch Plus. It's an extra add-on tool. This little chick I designed in off a coloring book page. I scanned in the page, used it as a backdrop, and traced around it to create this little chicken. These are fill stitches. So I drew the shape of the feet and then click a little button up here to fill it with a standard embroidery fill. And the chick, this one is actually created a little bit different, but I can use the applique tool to create the applique. You can also take these designs, the outline, so your placement, you can export it as an SVG file for those of you who have a Brother Scan and Cut or Silhouette cutter and pre-cut your fabric. And one other neat thing about the program, if you go up under Properties, let's select the right view, go under Properties, and hidden down here is a fabric button. There are fabrics that are installed in your Art and Stitch, so you can select one of these fabrics or some other place on your computer and bring a fabric in to apply to the little chick. And if you turn on your 3D button, you get a preview of kind of what that's going to look like when he sews out. So isn't he cute? And you can also use your wheel to zoom in, zoom out. I just think it's a handy little tool. But that concludes today's class, and if you have any questions, I'll entertain them at this point. And I hope that you've learned something from this. I don't know how many of you are starters, first-time users, haven't used the program very much at all. We can talk about that and any problems that you've been having. So thanks for joining us today, and let's get to those questions.